it has to be a curated offering that people want. If you're giving
Right.
people things they don't want, then it's irrelevant.
So, James, I really, really enjoyed this interview today. I mean, I'm always like impressed by people who come into this business with brand new ideas,
Yeah, and
and the
this one is
idea of
it's kind of
rewarding members.
simple. Yeah, it's simple, but it's new. It's like, oh wow, you kind of get the feeling with this one that you're like reward points for volume. Like, why did nobody think of this before? This is a really good idea. So yeah,
Right.
I think it's pretty cool. It's a very interesting conversation. And then of course I got my tip from Rich Norton today, which is, but it's interesting, Patty. I talked to an agent today, and he
Uh-huh.
said to me, he said he just had listened to a podcast episode recently that I did with Rich Norton where he was talking about the one call close. And he
Right. I
said,
remember that one. That was a cool one.
yeah, he said, I got done listening to that, and he said, I felt like I could walk through a brick wall. He said, I was ready to go. So
Uh-huh.
anyway, so I got some more tips for you from Rich Norton, and then tell us about the insiders report today, Patty.
Looks like the Fed's getting some pushback on its plan to lower the debit cap under the Durbin Amendment. I wouldn't expect to, let's put it this way. I would be vastly surprised if a final decision was made this year.
Yep. Yep. All right. Well, and, this episode of the podcast, of course, is sponsored by Netevia. Head over to netevia.com/professional to check that out. I'm sure we'll hear from Vlad here in a little bit. And then also, I do always mention that Tuo Rewards, they're not a paid sponsor, paid advertiser, consulting client, anything like that. Just a
Right.
fantastic story to share with you from the industry. So with that being said, Patty, are you ready to go?
Let's do it.
Hey, everybody. Patty and I are joined today by Jeff Moskowitz. How you doing today, Jeff?
Doing fantastic.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us. So we're going to be talking about one of the most unique programs I've seen in our industry for a little while. It's a rewards program that rewards merchants for their volume. Very, very unique. It's a tool for both sales and retention. OB Rawls actually introduced me to the idea a little while back, and I was like, "Wow, this is really, really cool." So we're excited to have that conversation with you, Jeff. Before we dive into that, though, give us a little bit of your background. How did you end up in this crazy industry? And then what was your journey like to, what you're doing today as the co-founder of Tuzo Rewards?
Yeah. So first of all, thanks so much for having me, James. It's really exciting to be here. And yeah, it's been quite the journey. We actually started in processing way back in the early 2000s. We had a point of sale software company that we built up specifically for convenience liquor, tobacco shops. And in doing that, we originally didn't even think about processing. We were just building this technology, the software, which was great. And as we started building merchants, each and every one of them was like, well, how do I do my processing? We were like, well, I don't know. You just get processing and figure it out yourself. At a certain point, they were like, we want something integrated. It needs to be something inside of the software. So we went looking around. At the time. There weren't many options, but Mercury Payments was,
Yep, that was
the
like
integration,
that
the
was the only
only
one.
integration place to go forever. So we signed up with them, and then, we started building this book, and we didn't even know what we were doing at the time. We were just like, focused on our technology, and the processing space was a side gig. And as we started growing, we noticed this, pervasive issue in the space, which was essentially that there was no differentiation. All processing was effectively the same. It was pretty much a race to zero in terms of, revenue.
Right.
And, we would literally work to get an account. They would want to have the integration into our point of sale system, but then some other guy would come in and offer them 10 basis points less. And next thing we know, without even a warning, we were like, oh, we lost that account. Hey, that's interesting. Didn't even get a notice or anything. So
Right.
it was like this world of differentiation that we couldn't solve with just our point of sale system. And during that time, we were building out a whole bunch of different stuff. And that was kind of around when the Dodd-Frank Durbin
Right.
Amendment stuff, when it
Right.
happened. And, we were toying with this idea of passing the fee to the customer at the time through our point of sale system. And we couldn't find a processor that would do it. Like, we literally went around and we were like, hey, there's this really easy way to differentiate. Let's do this together. We went to a bunch of processors. We struck out more times than I can count. We went to Money 2020 and all ETA and all the shows to try and find a partner.
Right.
And in the end, I met this guy who turned out he was at JetPay, and he's like, you know what? I love the idea. I'll do it with you. You build a way for us to assess the fee on the front end. We'll pull it off on the back end. At the time, terminal companies weren't interested in getting involved. They didn't want to be part of the play. They were nervous or whatever it was. So the only way we could come up with was we built a gateway. So a terminal would speak to our gateway. Gateway would calculate the fee, pass it on to the customer. the processor would approve it or decline it, pass it back, and that was how we did it. We built that out and licensed it to JetPay, and it just exploded. I mean, that was a huge opportunity. It was really exciting. And fast forward a few years, JetPay sold to NCR, and it was it was really exciting. It was a really cool time to be part of something that grew like that.
Yeah.
The craziest part about it is that, fast forward a couple of years past that, and this differentiation issue and the race to zero repeated itself in the cash discount space, which was insane.
Right.
You have this, you go out and people are boarding accounts like crazy because, at the time it was called cash discount. Today you can call it dual pricing or whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. But effectively that race to zero just started over, and the differentiation issue just, jumped right back up. It evaporated, right? Because everybody was offering the same thing. And today, like if you go online and search free point of sale system, free processing, you will be inundated with the exact same ad over and over and over again from 400 different processors or sales agents or whatever it is. They're all identical. There's no difference between any one of them at all. So, after the whole JetPay thing, we opened an ISO, we were running our book and we were growing it out. And, during COVID, this is me and my brother, we run this company together. One of the things that, we noticed is there was nothing to do during COVID because processing was basically shut down. No one was boarding business. So we had a little bit of capital and we got excited and invested in some luxury watches. And sure enough, we sold them and we flipped them, and it was a really exciting time. And we started just selling watches, just as a side hustle for fun. So we sold Rolex, Patek, APs, all those exciting watches. And we were doing, a significant amount of volume on a regular basis, bringing them in from overseas, sending them to local shops. It was a great time. And one of our clients happened to be this guy in Texas, and he owned a chain of barbecue joint restaurants down in Texas. And in the conversation with him, he's buying this watch. He's like, hey, I have this barbecue joint. So we're like, cool. How do you do your processing? And he's telling us like, well, I'm paying this much. And essentially he was paying close to 3% effective rate across the board. And he had, 3 locations. He was processing collectively about $1 million a month. And we were like, listen, Joseph, the guy's name was Joseph, this is crazy. Let's get you set up with, dual pricing. You'll save yourself a fortune. So he was really excited about it, super interested. We got him POS, demos for 14 different POS companies. We spent a significant amount of time. He's like, okay, this is great. I'm going to move forward soon. I need to talk to my partner and just finalize things. Give me 2 weeks and we'll get this done. During that 2 weeks, we left him alone, did what he asked, come back to him 2 weeks later to sell him another watch. And he says, oh, by the way, some guy walked in who had the exact same offering as you. And I signed up and it was great. And so far I've been doing it for like 5 days and it's wonderful. And we were like, are you like, that's crazy. So even with a relationship, the differentiation, there wasn't any. And it was a horrible experience. And we were like, it was not the first time it happened. And it's certainly not going to be the last time. But the thing that was really nuts about it is my brother on the spot took out his calculator and ran some numbers. He's like, wait a second, Joseph, you're trying to buy this watch. You wanted to buy a Rolex Pepsi, which is, at the time it was going for like $25,000. And he's like, I'll make you a deal. Switch back to us, sign a 3-year contract, and I'll give you that watch as soon as you finish the first year. And the guy said, are you serious? You can't be serious. My brother's like, no, I'm actually serious. I will literally hand you a Rolex. I'll fly out and personally give it to you. 3-year contract. Let's do it. And the guy said, done. And that was the birth of Tuzo. We realized very quickly that the only way to differentiate from everyone else in the market is to stop trying to sell processing, because everybody's selling the same thing. The processing is everything that it needs to be. We needed a tool that was different, that was something the merchants wanted, and that was going to create a way for us at the time an ISO to differentiate. And we built this platform, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, over this call. But in the end of the day, we realized very quickly that this is a tool for the whole industry. Because originally we were going to create Tuzo for our own ISO. We were like, we'll just create a rewards platform. It'll be for us, and we'll build this massive book and it'll be great, which I'm sure we could have done. But the problem with doing that is then we're the differentiator, and everyone's going to try and figure out a way to do exactly what we're doing. And there's no the long-term play didn't exist in that. It was a short-term play. So
Interesting.
that's how we got into it.
Wow. That's so I was wondering how you were going to tie these threads together of the watches and
Yeah.
the payments. And you actually did. You pulled it around. I was like, wow, that's pretty crazy, actually. Man, okay. So that's
That
probably
is a
one of the
very cool story. I have to admit, that's one of the coolest stories I've heard in the few years
It's
we've been doing this.
yeah, well,
All you
interesting way
needed
to
was the
close the
right
deal.
watch.
Yeah, there you
that's
go. I love
all we
it.
needed.
So, okay, so at a high level here, all right. So I love the story taking us up to, okay, you start Tuzo Rewards. What exactly does Tuzo Rewards do? And when I ask that question, I know that obviously your clientele is actually ISOs and agents. That's who you work, with and through. But as far as for the merchant, what's the elevator pitch to the merchant of like what is Tuzo Rewards?
So Tuzo Rewards is basically a rewards platform that's integrated to your backend processor, whoever your processor is, that allows you to earn points on each and every transaction that you can redeem for any number of things: travel, flights, hotels, rental cars, cruises, electronics, luxury goods like watches, gift cards, experiences, and more. Ultimately, it's a very similar model to what you see on the consumer side, right? Consumers have credit cards. You have an Amex card, you have a Chase card, you have a Citi card. When you use those cards, you earn points. But ultimately, who's paying for those points? It's actually the merchant, because the merchant's paying the interchange rates, and that's how the points are earned on that side. So we basically built a model that works exactly the same way, except for the merchant, and the points are earned based on their gross acceptance of cards. So if the guy processes 100 grand a month, he's earning points on 100 grand a month.
And so what kind of points? So what is it, like a 1 for 1, 1 point per dollar?
So
Or
that's the interesting part of this. The way we structured this, it's actually the ISO who's our partner, right? They signed it. We're a software as a service add-on for ISOs.
right?
Every ISO can differentiate themselves by offering whatever they want to each and every merchant specifically. So as an example,
Okay.
I can say, okay, this merchant, he's a huge merchant. I need to get that business. I want that business. And I have no other way to differentiate. So you know what? I'm going to offer him 5 points for every $10. That's basically 50 basis points, right, in rewards. Some other merchant might be like, I'll give you 10 points. I'll give you 1 point for every $10, or 2 points for every $10. So the ISO can structure the number of basis points allocated towards rewards on a case-by-case basis. Now, there's obviously a standard that they set for their book, right? I've had ISOs come to us and say, hey, I want to give 5 basis points in rewards to everybody in my whole book. They'll get an email from Tuzo that says, hey, welcome to Tuzo. You're now a rewards member. They can log in, see the rewards, see them earning. Now the ISO has the ability to go back to that merchant and say, hey, you're now part of Tuzo. If you signed a 2-year contract or a 3-year contract for your processing, we're going to increase that 5 basis points to 10 or to 15 or to 20. And you've created stickiness and differentiation through the giving of the rewards. And you've also created loyalty and the ability to build a true relationship. Because one of the things that we found running our own ISO and running a point of sale company is that in the end of the day, we usually only speak to our merchants when there's a problem.
Right.
The only time we get on the phone with them or have any touch points is when they're like, why are you holding my money? And we're like, whoa, it wasn't me. It was risk. I have nothing to do with it, right? But I'm playing catch up instead of actively touching my merchants. What this does is, by giving them the rewards, by allowing the ISO to be in charge of how those rewards are earned, we give them touch points. And we could get into the details of it, but ultimately in the app, the ISO actually has the ability to see what the merchants like. So the merchants can add items to their wish list. Let's say they add a trip to Cancun to the wish list. So now the ISO can be like, hey, I saw you trying to get that trip to Cancun. You're only 20,000 points away. Super pumped for you. By the way, you know what? Because I love you, I'm going to throw in 5,000 points for you today as a bonus. And that is something that gives the ISO, the agent, whoever's talking to that merchant, positive touch points. And in building relationships, that is key to everything.
That's good stuff. So, it's no secret that, getting merchants engaged in reward type programs has been a big challenge in the industry. And I think ultimately I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs come along with something that I was like, oh, that sounds really cool. And then I'm like, oh, but merchants don't care, or ISOs don't care. Like usually one of the two doesn't care. And if either one of them doesn't care, you have a big problem. And in this case, I know you guys have already run some pilots and had some good experiences. So, why is it that merchants care about this particular kind of reward when it seems like a lot of other programs they just don't really seem to get engaged in?
So it's been really interesting to experience this. We knew that in theory, giving points to merchants would be beneficial, but the response that we've seen has been
Yeah.
way bigger than we thought it would be originally. In the end of the day, I think that there are two factors. Number one, the points have to be valuable, right? You can give a guy points, but if they can't use them for anything they want, they don't
Right.
really care,
Right.
right? So one of the things we built very early on is we said we have to curate an amazing offering of points. And on our platform, we have literally, package deals, trips to Cancun for 2, including flights and hotels, 3 nights in Vegas, things like that, package deals, but also the ability to book a direct flight to anywhere you want or a hotel room anywhere you want using our platform. So we did integrations directly into the back end of these major platforms that allowed us to have direct travel access. So hotels, flights, rental cars, etc. But we also realized that there's lots of things that people want that they're not necessarily big merchants. They're not going to get the volumes that are necessary to get, 500,000 points in 3 months to go on that trip they want. So we also went on the electronic side. So we have iPads and Apple Watches and, laptops, all those types of things as well. And then we also threw in the ability to integrate into a gift card network that allows us to have people, they can redeem for as little as $100 in Amazon gift cards and, Best Buy gift cards, whatever it is. There's the thousands of different options in terms of the gift cards. But so number one is it has to be a curated offering that people want. If you're giving people things they don't want, then it's irrelevant. There was a company back in the early 2000s that tried to build a rewards platform, and they were offering advertising space in Airtran Airways newspaper. And I was like, what? Like
Really?
that's what you're offering? That's the reward? To me, that was like, I don't even like, even at the time, I'd be like, that's a little weird. Like, why would I want to advertise for my Italian restaurant in some airlines magazine? Like, it just didn't make sense. But that's what they came up with because they couldn't figure out how to A, fund the points to make them valuable, and B, to curate enough of an opportunity to give those points. So that's number one. Number two is that the market today is very point centric. So if you look, just as an example, Chase, Citi, Amex, these companies have expanded their points platform at a rate of 20% year over year for the past 5 years running. So you see that people on the consumer side are extremely interested in points. There are blogs and sites and so much stuff. There's like people who are telling you how to earn the most points if you use this card and then transfer to there. Like those types of things happen now. They didn't happen 5 years ago. They didn't happen 10 years ago. So the ability for them to do that now. And then there's companies out there. There's a company recently that just launched that is giving people points for using their custom credit card to pay their rent. And people love them. People are freaking out about it. Oh my gosh. And what are they getting already? A couple thousand points a month. Our merchants are going to be able to earn significantly more than that because they're earning on their gross incoming volume, not on their spend. So that gross incoming volume is way higher. So the ability to earn points and quickly makes a big difference.
So one little follow up to this is want to be clear. So for the merchant, right? How do they use this? Is this like an app on their phone? Is this a website they log into? And then because they have to like buy stuff, like what is this exactly? If you give me the short version of that, I'm just kind of curious what their experience is.
Yeah, so it's like a gamified shopping app. So it's right now it's a web application, so they can access it from their phone or from any computer anywhere in the world. We are launching a full-blown Android and iOS application, hopefully to come out before the end of this year, which will be available on the app stores and all those places. But even right now, they can log in and there's basically, it looks very similar to what you'd see on an Amazon page. You can break it down by category and you can see, all of the luxury watches. So there's Rolexes and APs and Pateks and all those great things. And then, if you click on trips, you can see all the curated preset travel packages. If you click on, travel by itself, you can book a hotel room anywhere in the world. So it's basically like a very similar to something that they already know. It's very similar to Chase's website, Amex's website,
Right.
in
Sure.
that it's a curated location where they can sort through all these things. Their points are available at the top of the screen, so they can see how many points they have at any time. When they put something in their cart, they can check out just like they would on any other site. And when they check out, they can use their points to pay. If there's any excess, they can pay with a credit card or something like that in order to pay the difference. And we have a place for them to put like their wish list items so that within the app, they're able to identify those items. And the cool part is the ISO, who is responsible for bringing that account in, they actually get access to a admin portal where they can see the items that are wish listed. They can see how many points their customers have.
Sure.
They can see the things that the customers are wanting, so they can create those touch
Right.
points that we talked about.
And I know it's super early on, but like as far as the initial pilot, I mean, what were kind of the good and bad experiences you saw from merchants in terms of their engagement? Like, I don't know if you have any high level stats you could share yet or anything like that, but like, are the merchants actually logging in and like looking at this thing and all of that? Like, what have you found so far?
Yeah, so it's actually been way crazier than we thought. We kind of had a feeling that merchants wouldn't be the problem. It was the ISOs, because ISOs at the end of the day, they have to give something up, right? They're setting aside a number of basis points in order
Right.
to access the program. So
Right.
we were like like we weren't sure how that was going to play out. But what
Yeah.
we've seen so far is that the response has been so positive from a merchant side. I had an ISO, I just spoke to him this morning. He pitched 9 merchants last week. 9 merchants last week himself. He has a whole team, but he went out to try it. He
Right.
pitched 9 merchants. He closed 7 on the spot, right?
Right.
And they closed with dual pricing at $399, no problem whatsoever. What we've seen is that in the end of the day, that changing of the conversation in the sales cycle and the pitch, the ability to change the pitch has been extremely positive for both merchants and ISOs. And the ability to build those relationships, because in the end of the day, being able to walk into a merchant and say, hey, forget your processing. Where do you want to take your wife on vacation this month? And he's like, huh? I thought aren't we talking? He's like, I know. We'll get to the processing, but where do you want to take your wife on vacation? Oh, I see you have a daughter. Is she going to college? Oh, great. Do you need a laptop for her? Right? You're able to ingratiate yourself and embed yourself in a different way into their reality that gives them something that's much more exciting and tangible. So what we've seen in terms of the response from merchants specifically has been extremely positive. They're logging in, they're throwing items into their wish list. They're checking on it. I mean, we have records of how often they come in. I mean, they're coming in every day and they're checking for new items, and they're seeing all these different things. They're checking how many points it'll cost me to go to a hotel in wherever they want to go. That's what they're doing. At the same time, we're seeing a extremely excited pool from the ISOs and the agents that we've spoken with. And,
Sure.
it takes time to train them and for them to understand how to use the tool. But the cool part about it is that in the end of the day, it's not really a tool that's going to change what they're doing. Their offering is the same. They're offering the same
Right.
POS systems or terminals or same next day funding and all of those things. But what we've seen is that they've been able to take merchants who were, let's say, hesitant to do dual pricing, or merchants that had already been pushed down in dual pricing. Like they started at $399, some guys sold them at $3.50, another guy sold them at $3.25. So today they're at $3.25. They're able to come back in and say, hey, look, I see you're at $3.25 and I appreciate that. I'm going to give you 25 basis points in rewards. It's 2.5 points for every $10 spent if you sign up with me. And that's going to match your rate. But I will give you an extra 10 or an extra point for every $10 if you go back to $399. And they think about it for a second, then they run the numbers, because we have a calculator that we built into our website that allows the ISO to like plug in a number and show them how many points they're going to get. So they start thinking about it. They're like, wait, I'm going to get an extra 15,000 points a month towards my trip to Cancun. Yeah, let's do that. I'm okay with that, because the only reason they went down in the first place is not because they really particularly care about how much fee is being passed. They just said, "Oh, it's lower. I'll do lower." They didn't have a reason for it particularly.
Right.
So what we've seen is, in terms of response, has been extremely positive across the boards, both on the ISO side and on the merchant side. And, we've seen relationships that are really blossoming. We have ISOs who are so excited to be able to talk to their merchants about anything other than processing, anything. So that's been great.
That's really interesting, and it shows how the ISO and the agents are leveraging this during the sales process. What I'm curious about is post sale, in
Sure.
terms of retention. I know it's very early in the process, but what kind of results are you seeing in terms of retention?
So, I mean, again, it is pretty early. We've only been doing this since January, so we're only, 6 months in terms of retention. However,
Sure.
the responses that we've seen have been extremely positive, and we've had merchants willing to sign long-term contracts with their agents. Now, that I think is a big deal because in today's industry, those long-term contracts are elusive, right? They used to be the
Yeah.
standard. Like people used to
Right.
sign people up for 5-year leases on terminals that cost $400. It was
Right.
crazy what was happening. Like you're going back like, 10, 15 years, but
Right.
what we're seeing is that people are happy to commit and they're happy to stay retained as long as there's something in it for them.
Right.
And the ability for ISOs to do things for their merchants. So we have built in coming out in next quarter, we're actually going to have a platform that's added to this app that allows the ISOs to run raffles for their merchants. Just as an example. So these are ways to engage. Hey, I'm your ISO. I'm going to give away an iPad this month. Why don't you sign up for the raffle? We're going to give away an iPad. Oh, how do I get into the raffle? It's very simple. You pass one lead through the app for another merchant who's interested in processing, and you get entered into the raffle. Now, we're
Now, and,
agnostic.
and if you do two leads, you get
Two
entered
entries.
twice. Yeah.
Again, the ISO
Cool.
controls that communication.
Right.
We're just the platform that allows for it to happen. And when they do submit those leads, we do run the raffle and we do give them the iPad. However, the ISO is the one who's running that. So he or she are setting the guidelines for that raffle, how it's going to work. And the leads don't go to us because I'm not an ISO anymore. We got out of the game in order to
Uh-huh.
build something that we felt was more valuable than building up my book. So
Right.
this gives the ISO the ability to have more touch points, more positive touch points, and lower their cost of acquisition. Because if my friend calls me up and says, hey, listen, buddy, I just got an iPad for my processing, or I'm taking my wife to Cancun, you should really check these guys out. Why would your friend say no? Right. At
Right.
that point, it's a much easier conversation because before, what would I get well, how would I get my merchant to get me another merchant? There was no value because,
Right.
hey, yeah, he's got free processing and a free POS system. The guy's like, so do I. Like,
Right.
I have that already. So, creating those tools that'll help long-term engagement. And again, I think that brings us to the curation of rewards. In the end of the day, the stickiness, the retention are all going to be based on the offering. So one of the things we're doing, we're trying to build in, we don't have it yet, but we are working, hopefully by the end of third quarter, we're going to have a full integration to one of the ticketing platforms that allows you to book, basketball games, concerts, those types of things.
Right.
So it all comes down to the more you can offer, the more
Right.
valuable you are to your merchant. And that doesn't mean
Yeah.
me, because in the end of the day, the value is going straight to the ISO, because who's
Sure.
offering the service?
Right.
The ISO.
So yeah, so I think my last question on this is when we think about, the setup for the ISO, I know what a lot of them are thinking right now is like, well, how does it work? What is the kind of the economics of it? So if you could maybe, whatever high level information you can share there, I'm sure it's customized for each partner, but as far as the economics go, maybe talk about that. And then also, what's the branding experience like? Is this Tuzo Rewards? Is this like XYZ ISO that white label Tuzo Rewards? Like, give me a little bit of context on that piece of it, just to kind of close this out so the ISOs really get a little more of the nitty gritty of how this actually transpires.
Sure. So ultimately, our goal is to have the cost be as low as humanly possible to the ISO. That is the goal because as someone who was an ISO and worked in the space, I know my margins are what they are, and I got to keep those margins good. And I have to pay my salespeople. So right off the top, there's a percentage that's coming out and
Mhm.
going to each of the agents. So
Right.
from an ISO perspective, it has to make sense. So we started this today. Any ISO who signs up, they come in and they can get this at 10 basis point cost override on their whatever account they're bringing in. So it's 10 basis points and $5 per month per account. However, that 10 basis points drops with volume. So once they hit a certain number of volume, it'll go down and go down and go down. It goes down to 6 basis points pretty easily, I would say, for most ISOs out there. Now, in terms of the ability to white label, we do have a co-branding platform, which it'll be like, James's ISO,
Powered by Tuzo
powered by
Rewards.
Tuzo Rewards. You'd have part of that is now that there's no fees for the platform other than the 10 basis points of $5. If someone wants the co-branded model, what we do is we build a custom landing page for them. We give them a custom calculator widget for their website so they can throw the widget into their site, which will calculate their points. They can preset those, and they have a custom experience when their customers log in. It all says powered by Tuzo, but there is a cost for that, but it's a nominal cost, relatively speaking.
Sure.
So the cost is, we try and keep it as low as possible. We try and keep it to go down as much as possible, because in the end of the day, our focus is this should pay for itself. If an ISO is doing it right, it should pay for itself. We had a liquor store chain. It's an ISO brought us this deal. It was a liquor store chain. He was processing 200,000 a month per location, 5 locations. The guy was at 3.5% cash discount. Wasn't particularly interested in switching because he wasn't paying a fee. He didn't really care. This ISO went in and said, hey, look, let me show you all these rewards. The guy ran the numbers. The ISO ended up giving him 25 basis points in rewards, right? However, he got the guy to go from 3.5 to 3.99. So who's paying for those rewards if you think about it, right? The 25 basis points don't actually come out of his pocket at all. As a matter of fact, he wouldn't have gotten the account either way. So this merchant is actually getting 250,000 points a month in rewards. It's like 3 million points a year. And the ISO locked in the account for 3 years at 3.99. So it's all covered, right? That's the whole point.
Right. So yeah, the idea is you're in that pitch, you're adding value in. So I get that. So I think if I understand it correctly, what you'd say is in that scenario, if they were paying the 10 basis points and $5, that would mean like they would be paying for each of the locations $5 a month to use the Tuzo Rewards program. And then instead of 25 basis points, they would have a 35 basis point cost. Is that, I understand it, right? Got it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Cool. And that's essentially a management fee for running the rewards, curating the rewards, handling, someone orders the big screen TV and it gets broken and shipping. We don't want them calling the ISO. That's where we come in. Their flight gets delayed, their hotel room has bugs in it, whatever it is.
Right.
That's where we come in. That's our role in the play.
Got it.
Right. This is really cool. I have to admit, we have a lot of cool things that come through here, James, but
yeah, this is pretty interesting.
This one's pretty cool. This rates high in the coolness factor. So
we appreciate that.
So for those who want to learn more about partnering, right? Where would you send them?
So, TuzoRewards.com. So TUZO rewards.com is our website. It has tons of information there. You can actually access the calculator and the merchants page in Tuzo Rewards. So you can kind of get an idea of different items and rewards you can get. You can email it. I'm Jeff at Tuzo Rewards. You can email Hirsch, HERSH at Tuzo Rewards. My brother. And we're here to service the ISOs. That is the play, right? Our clients are ISOs and agents and processors, and that's what we're focused on. Their clients are the merchants, and we are there to service them on behalf of the ISO. That's the real everything behind it.
Right.
Awesome.
Right.
Well, Jeff, it was so great having you on today. Appreciate you sharing these insights with us, and I'm wishing you guys great success in this venture. It should be exciting.
Yeah, super excited. Thank you so much.
Hey, everybody. Got my good friend Vlad here with a very interesting shirt. Vlad, you want to kind of explain for those maybe even listening? They can't see this shirt, but what are you wearing?
Oh, I'm wearing the Panthers Stanley Cup winners shirt.
Nice.
James, nobody believed it when we started offering out box tickets. Panthers went all the way in the Stanley Cup and won it in Game 7 in an epic battle with Edmonton Oilers. And during that entire run, there was some members of the Panthers team that got loved by my team personally, me personally, and I am a big fan of the goalie of Florida Panthers is Sergei Bobrovsky. The entire fan base is calling him Bobby. So he literally robbed all of the opponents of so many goal chances during the series. And one of those robberies, which we now call it Bob Robbery, which is what this shirt is about.
Nice.
Is memorialized here, right here, if you could see it, and the audience can see it. It's a very, very, very famous save he made during the series with Tampa Bay Lightning, where he literally blindly jumped from one corner to the other and was able to save a sure 100% goal into the Panthers, to the Panthers, and eventually Panthers
Nice.
won the series with Tampa Bay Lightning. So, Bob Robbery is my new word. I'm excited for the series, but the new beginning starts today. Today is an NHL draft day, and the free agency day. Today is actually free agency day when we're at the time that we're recording this. So we're gonna probably see a little bit different Florida Panthers, but nevertheless, we
Right.
will be providing a full Florida Panthers Stanley Cup champion experience coming up in the new season 2025. For now, our attention is getting to the famous game of soccer. And boy, let me tell you what's going on in Copa America. USA, unfortunately, it had its up and downs, but the Messi experience, it's in full force. Argentina, Brazil, all in United States, showing their best soccer games. And the knockout stage is about to begin in July with the final in Miami.
Oh wow, nice. Right there in your hometown. So
Exactly.
how do the professional card members, first of all, for those maybe that haven't signed up, what is that? Tell us what it is, and then what do they need to do in order to gain access to these exclusive events you have for payments professionals?
Well, professional card members, of course, will have access to some last minute tickets for the final of Copa America, exclusive tickets coming up to famous games, and in some cases it's exclusive watch parties and some exclusive experiences coming up because we have the Olympic Games that are going to be starting
Sure.
in Paris later on this summer.
Okay.
So professional card members are getting royal treatment. I am not going to state that our professional card is issued by MasterCard, and MasterCard is a sponsor of Copa America 2024.
Nice. So for those who want to learn more, they head over to netevia.com/professional, netevia.com/professional. And again, for those maybe that are newer to the concept, this is a card that is specifically for card payment professionals, payments industry professionals, whether you're a salesperson, you're an executive, you work at a payment processing company, head over to netevia.com/professional, check it out and start earning reward points so that Vlad here can cash those in for you with fantastic rewards and events.
We are cashing in, and we're also having our executive team members accompanying you to all these events so you have maximum amount of fun.
Love it. Thanks, Vlad. Well, I'm here again with my good friend Rich Norton coming to us from the field today. How you doing today, Rich?
Excellent. Ready to make it happen.
All right, I love it. So today we're going to talk about everybody's favorite topic, which is closing the sale. And I think interestingly, Rich, I've heard a lot of people tell me that well, I'm trying the Ben Franklin close, and I'm trying the Abraham Lincoln close, and I don't know. There's all these closing tactics and techniques and everything. Give us the real scoop, Rich, from somebody who closes 400 plus merchant accounts a year. What does it mean to actually close a merchant account?
So closing is in your mindset. As I said before, and I'll say it a million times, that very rare do you miss someone in the end. You're missing them in the beginning. So you have to have the mindset when you're first walking into the business, you're closing all the way through. Now, how do you close? You're doing questions, and the magic answer is yes. You're getting them involved. You're getting them visualizing having our program already, and you're closing them all the way through. And when you're doing that, you're going to find when you get down to the end, it's going to be a lot easier rather than battling all the way through. When
Right.
you're doing it the right way, when you get down to the end, it's an assumptive close where the philosophy is like, wow, this is a no-brainer. What do I need to do to get started?
Yeah, I love it. So let's back up a little bit here and let's talk about kind of moving through the sales process. I personally always had a rule where I wanted to hear that merchant say yes at least 3 or 4 times before I went into the assumptive close, and I always like to do that as well. I'm curious your thoughts on that. Do you try to get a lot of yeses before the big yes? And if so, what are some examples of ways that you build that momentum? What are maybe some questions you ask or details that you run through?
Throughout the presentation, as you're speaking them, you can ask questions like, can you see how merchants love a program like this? Can you see why people love to deal with a company like us? So again, going back to what we talked in previous videos, is to visualize them having the program already. So engaging with the merchant is very, very important. Again, having control, asking them a lot of questions. And when you ask them the questions, the art of listening is very important. So you have to show that you're right tuned in with them, because what happens, especially when we're brand new, we'll present somebody and then we're thinking about the next thing to say while we're asking them a question, and we didn't even listen to what they said. So it's very important to listen to the merchant and find out what their needs are. Keep going, get them engaged in what you're doing. No long drawn out presentations. Know when you've gotten to the point and now it's time to move on and close the merchant.
Yeah, I think a lot of times, Rich, people try to move forward in the sales process, and it's almost like they're driving their car blindfolded. And they have no data, they have no information, and they're literally just presenting their program with no regard for what the merchant has said, either because they didn't ask any questions and the merchant hasn't said anything. Well, that happens a lot. Or as you said, the merchant is talking and they're thinking about what they're going to say next. I really enjoyed. I think it's Chris Voss, the one that he wrote the book on Never Split the Difference. But he has a master class, and one of the things he talked about was that active listening, mirroring. When someone says, and I do this all the time now, when someone says, yeah, we've had a lot of issues with our payment processing company, and I'll say, a lot of issues, and they'll say,
Yes.
oh yeah, they just ripped us off. They ripped you off. Yeah, mirroring.
Yes.
So there's so many things like that, right, that we can do that are going to allow us to drill down. And then when we listen to that, we're able to move forward. One other quick thing I want to do before we get into the actual closing at the end is talk to me about silence. You and I never had this conversation. I'm a huge believer in this, meaning a lot of times salespeople are so concerned about any dead air that, they're just like so quick to say something, versus when a merchant says something to me, a lot of times it's like, I'll pause and kind of, even if I don't need to, I'll pause and just kind of, right. I want to show them that I heard what they said. I'm listening to it. What are your thoughts on this? Do you use this tactic as well?
Yeah, I love that. So if they bring something up, you're basically showing them that, hey, I'm really interested in what you're saying, or that's a good point that you're making. So make a pause, take a pause right there, and then compliment them. I'll tell you what, I've been doing this for a long time, and man, that's a great point. That is a fantastic point. And you can maybe get them to elaborate. Tell me why that's important to you.
Yeah, I
And
love
now
it.
you get them talking about their pain points.
Yep. So we're complimenting them. We're not feeling rushed, but we're staying on point. So we get through
Yes.
this process. We've gotten them to agree that, hey, this program, they can understand why it's been so popular. Things like those types of questions. What do you do at the end to transition? You're like, okay, I think I got them. What do you do to transition into this final process to get them started?
Yes, this is important, very important, because here's what happens. A representative can give this great dynamic presentation, and then they get all nervous at the end because they want to write that merchant up. And it's like in their mind, they may, speaking of silence, right? They may say, well, gosh, I hope they say yes. I hope they say yes. Where you don't want to be at that level right there, because you've taken an
Right.
assumptive approach all the way through. So what I do when I get down to the end, I'm presenting everything. We're right down to the end, and I'll make a statement. I'll say, like, now you can see why my job is so easy. Smiling, my head is up and down. My job is so easy. At this point, everybody says to me, they're like, Rich, this is obviously a no-brainer. What do I need to do to take advantage of this today? So what I'm doing is I'm planting the seeds right there. And
Yeah.
then what I like to do, because you have to put yourself in a merchant's frame of mind also, because they're thinking, like, at this point, how is this going to be hard? Is it difficult? This is that eliminating
Right.
objections before they come. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to give a little summary. This is the visualizing of everything that's going to happen. You're going to give a summary of what's going to happen. So here's what's going to happen, Mr. Joe Merchant. Today is Thursday. The equipment's going to get here by early next week. Now, whether you're presenting it or you have the office do it, come in and set it up. But I walk them through. We're going to come in, set it up. We're going to show you how to use it. We're actually going to assist you in getting rid of who you currently have right now. So the thoughts that's in their mind, rather than them thinking that this is going to be too hard, what do I do with this? So I'm eliminating all those objections, and I'm showing them how easy this is going to be. So I'm giving a brief summary. Today's Thursday. You're going to get the equipment. We're going to walk you through setting it up. We're going to show you how to use it. We're going to assist you in getting rid of who you currently have. And a lot of times they'll stop. Oh, you guys do that? Yep, we'll handle all that for you. And at this point, everybody says, what do I got to do to get this going? I'm sure you're probably thinking the same way. Now I'm getting into the yes questions. All I'm going to need from you guys is a check. You write void, copy of the driver's license. Do you want everything to go into the same bank account that you're using right now? Yes, we do. Is it a business account? Yes, it is. All right. All I'm going to need is a check. I can take a picture of it if you prefer, or if you want to make a copy of it. Which works better for you? Also known as the which pitch right there. Visualizing it, right? So what I'm going to do, just to keep it simple, don't make this a long drawn out thing. Don't say, I'm going to fill out the contract right now. And it's none of that, right? I'm just going to fill out the information. Just takes a couple minutes. We're going to get everything going, and then we'll come in and we'll set everything up for you.
Yeah, I love it. And I think, I think there's certain words, right, that we want to remove from our vocabulary. Contract is one of those words. There's a lot of people that I've sold, no, we don't say that, so that, right. There's certain keywords that we want to avoid. One of the other interesting ones that I always, found was a negative was social security number. I have ended up removing that word. I will not say that word to them unless even if they say it, it's like, well, you can say it, but I'm not going to say it. I will say, I'd say now there is a little bit more information that we need from you. And then I'll turn my tablet around, or it used to be the paper, and I would turn it around and just point to it and say, if you can go ahead and fill that out for me, I need to check one thing on my schedule real quick while you do that. And then I would look away from them and look at my schedule, and they will sit there for a minute and they'll put it in there, so little things like that. You got to figure out how to get past some of this stuff. Right. So, I love it. So we get into the assumptive close. And now we're basically, again, I think the mindset though is so crucial, Rich, because what you're describing is just a different mindset. You should get them to the point where when you're getting ready to close per se, you're not thinking to yourself, I wonder if they're going to move forward. You're thinking, this is obviously a good program for them. I believe this is the right decision for the merchant. And so now I'm just going to help them get signed up. And I'm just going to work through the details. And I want to make sure that what I always tell people is I say, I want to take some notes down here because I definitely want to make sure that you get a great experience. So let me start putting some information here to make sure I have everything right. Just take me a couple of minutes. How do you spell your last name? Right. Or I'll say, what's the legal name of the business? And so I find getting that first little question. I love what you do, which is the check, just need to copy the check and the driver's license. You got to start somewhere small. I don't think you want to say something like, well, that's all the information I have for you today. What do you think? It's like,
exactly.
You're going to zoom way out, and they're going to say, well, I think I need to think about it, whereas instead you just go right into something small. What's the legal name of the business? I just need to copy the check, those types of things. And I love the alternate advance, or as you call it, the which pitch, the yes or yes, which would work better for you. So all that's fantastic. Rich, for those agents that are resonating with this content, they're like, wow, I want to know how to actually go into the merchant and do that, because there's a lot more to it. And they want to work personally with you and your team. What would you tell them? Where would you send them to learn more?
Yes. Give me a call. I'll speak with you. People say that, you're too busy, and just call me, text me, phone number for me, 904-434-4635, or you can email at payrock, Payroc, richnorton@gmail.com. We're having incredible success all around the country. You'll find with me, I'm very transparent. You can talk to any one of our representatives, whether they've been here for a month, whether they've been here for 20 plus years, and you'll hear some wonderful testimonies, some life-changing events that are happening in people's lives. And I'm glad to be part of that. That's, again, where my passion lies, is to help people become rock stars in this industry.
Love it. Rich, it's always such a pleasure speaking with you. Wish you great success as you get out there in the field today.
Thank you for all you do. Appreciate you.
So, James, there's a group of Republican lawmakers that have introduced legislation to derail the Federal Reserve's plan to slash the cap on debit card interchange.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm all ears. I didn't know about this. Okay.
Yeah. Just came out the other day. It's authored by Senator Ted Budd this bud's for you. Sorry, I couldn't resist it.
What a name for a politician too. You know, you think they would have
Right?
changed it by now, but okay.
It's
Uh,
called the Secure Payments Act, and it would require the Fed to pause its debit cap fee proposal until it can complete a full quantitative impact study of the effects on consumer costs and the wider economy. Now, just by way of background, and I know most people know this, but let's just put it out there anyway
Sure.
for a few newbies. The Fed was charged with regulating debit interchange under the Durbin Amendment to the Dodd-Frank Act.
Okay.
And it was for card issuers with $10 billion or more in assets.
Right.
Now, at present, the cap amounts to about 25 cents, 21 cents plus 5 basis points and a penny to cover fraud prevention costs. The new plan would lower that to 14.4 cents plus 4 basis points and 1.3 cents to cover fraud prevention. They call it a haircut. I call it a buzz cut.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to put this into perspective, that means the interchange on a $50 debit card transaction would drop from roughly 25 cents to 17.7 cents.
Right.
Which is a fairly significant. Now, the Fed's plan has drawn criticism from banks who, of course, argue it's too much of a haircut, right? Merchants who want an even bigger haircut, and even from within its own ranks. There's one of the governors, Governor Michelle Baumann, in a statement on the record, asserted the proposal, quote, aims to achieve rough justice by establishing a single cap that applies to all covered issuers. So the Bud proposal would have the Fed hit the pause button until it can complete this full quantitative study. And a similar bill has been introduced in the House by a group of Republican congressmen. It obviously has the backing of numerous banking trade groups, you know, the ABA, the ICBA, the credit union groups. Senator Budd has described the Fed proposal as a, quote, misguided policy that hurts everyday North Carolinians. Now, it remains to be seen if the bill will get any traction in Congress or the Fed takes the hint and chooses to back off on its own.
Right.
But my experience from covering the Fed over the years is that when anybody, you know, we're talking here now, there's 5 senators and 5 or 10 congressmen.
Right.
That's a lot of people that are like, you know, pounding on the Fed's door. And the Fed has always been, when it comes to regulations like this, it's always slow moved them.
Right. They're not as political. They're not trying to make waves if they don't have to. So.
No, they don't want to make any waves. They'd rather be way out in the background, make people, I mean, they do it in monetary policy. You can imagine how they are in regulation. So I'm thinking that this is going to get put on the back burner for a while.
Yeah. Wow. Very interesting, Patty. I'll be really curious to see about that. I mean, because it is such a big deal. I think people get lost in the numbers where it's like, well, we're talking about $50, and then it's like, well, 25 cents or 17 cents. Who cares? And it's like, well, but the part that I think is important is it's kind of like, forget about the $50 for a minute. It's like the gross revenue of the bank. Is the 25 cents to the 17 cents. So it's like, you know, for a big bank, it's like, well, they make 25 million a year in revenue on this debit program, and they're about to make 17 million.
17 million. And that's
a big cut
for something.
Yeah. And so now you're looking at your reward points, and you're looking at the way you're servicing your clients, you know, it does cut into some core parts of the program. And so I think it's definitely worth taking a pause and see. And I, you know, I've always said forever, I've said that they should have balanced it better in terms of a lower per item and a higher percentage.
Of course.
That was the biggest idiot thing to me. The issue with the Durbin Amendment from the beginning was the 22 cents. I think it really, really unnecessarily targeted coffee shops and small ticket merchants. And it's like, and it's like, I feel like they never even realized that was going to happen. And and when I read the stuff, you know, about what they were going to do with this, you know, quote unquote haircut, still nothing about that. And it's like, well, do they not realize that what they did was basically gave a huge gift to merchants that do $1,000 average ticket, and they did a huge penalty to the coffee shops and the cafes that do a smaller. It's just really stupid.
Or even a little, you know, mom and pop shops. I was thinking about, you know, I was in a shop the other day and I wanted to buy a pack of gum.
Right.
I wasn't going to use a debit card to buy a pack of gum. I wasn't going to make that poor guy have
Right.
to pay
Right.
a quarter interchange
Right.
for my 99-cent pack of gum.
Right. But most people have no idea. You
Right.
know?
So of course, I gave him $1 and
Right,
everything was
right.
hunky dory. But
Right.
you're right. Most people aren't going to think that way. You
Yep.
and I do because we understand the
Yep.
mechanics and the economics of it.
Yeah. Well, good
Yeah.
stuff, Patty. Well, definitely very interesting. Keep us posted on this one, which, as you said, my guess is there probably won't be much to keep us posted on for a while because they're probably
No, I
just
think
gonna
it's
delay.
going to be backburnered for a while. But
Yeah.
I'll make sure that I keep an eye on everything.
Awesome. Thanks, Patty.
Sure thing.